Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us on our web chat webinar today. We have our expert with us here today, Silva. Say hi, Silva.
Oh, hello.
Hello. This is quite a niche webinar we're running today. Our other webinars are very, they have a subject that pretty much resonates with everybody. Today we have decided to do a subject that is quite niche in terms of web chat, or perhaps some of you will know that as live chat. This in the last few years has been a really important course for us. I think the use of web chat and live chat has grown so much, even in the last 12 months during all the various lockdowns. And it's a subject that people are asking for more and more. So we thought we would run a webinar on it today, just to tell you a little bit about web chat, how it's being used, some of the hints and tips. So we're probably going to run this webinar for about 30 to 40 minutes. And then at the end of the webinar, you will have an opportunity to stay online and ask Silva, who really is the expert in this subject, any questions that you have to ask her. We also have a chat box too, so feel free throughout the webinar if you want to put a question in the chat box, and then at the end I will go to the chat box as well and have a look at what's in there. So without further ado, I am going to pass over to Silva and let her go ahead and tell you all about web chat.
Okay, thank you. So yes, I've been involved in web chat since, gosh, 2000s, early 2000s. I was originally involved a lot in contact centres in telephony, and then gradually web chat started to emerge. So I got very interested in that. And one of the reasons I got interested in that is that I have actually qualified as a psychotherapist, but as part of that, I was also very interested in social psychology and the way language works. And web chat really intrigued me for that reason. So that's kind of what got me into it. So work with lots of different organisations in terms of web chat, and it's quite amazing sometimes how often you see the same things keep cropping up. So I'm going to share some of those things with you today. I was also involved in judging a lot for the top 50 customer service companies for UBM before it was taken over, and quite a few awards for the companies that we work with, so that was all good fun. So that's a bit about me. We've done the housekeeping bit, so yeah, please do put any questions you've got in chat and we'll endeavour to answer those as we go along. So let's have a look first of all as to what's actually happening with web chat at the minute. So this is what we're going to be covering today. So why it's growing as fast as it is. I think we've got COVID-19 to thank for a lot of that at the moment. We'll look at the key principles. We'll look at some common mistakes that people make, and that's both from the management point of view and from the agent's point of view. Best practice. So we'll share some of that with you based on my experience. And right at the end, 3 little top tips to take away. And my thing with web chat, it's not doing one thing amazingly well. It's about doing lots of little things just a little bit better. And that's what I'm going to be sharing with you, the little things that will make a difference, a big difference actually. Okay, so web chat is growing fast. So in the last year, in some centres it's grown by as much as 90%, and it's continuing to grow, and it's forecast to grow again. So very much something that's fast overtaking telephony in some areas. And particularly with millennials and Generation Z, they definitely oftentimes are preferring web chat to a telephone call. And the research is telling us that's around the ability to multitask. So they can have a web chat and be doing something else all the time. And just because they've been brought up in that kind of text era, really, it seems to be more attractive then. But having said that, it is used across the board, across all age ranges. As I said, COVID-19's had a major impact. And I think also a lot of organisations that did have a big telephony presence at the beginning of the pandemic found it much easier to get web chat agents working from home than telephony. Sometimes that was a bit more complicated. So I think that's there's a lot more going on as well in terms of businesses offering it as a viable alternative. And as I said, they found it easier. So, and just to put that into perspective, old Jeff has increased his net worth by 50% in 2020. So I'm not a stranger to Amazon myself, so I'm guessing we've all put a few Amazon orders through.
Silva, can I just ask a question there?
Yeah, sure.
How many companies, what percentage of companies, should I say, do you think offer web chat at this moment in time?
B2B, it's about 60 odd percent.
Okay.
And B2C, it's a bit lower actually, probably about 30, which is quite surprising.
I thought it would have been higher for B2C than B2B.
Yeah, you would, wouldn't you?
Okay.
I think some of the real big organisations, financial services are quite a big driver in web chat.
Okay.
Obviously, they have a lot of seats and they're probably the biggest sector that are using it. So that's probably an interesting bit because they've got the business customers as well. So
Okay.
yeah, thank you. Okay, so a few more stats here. Definitely reporting an increase in loyalty, sales and service where we've got web chat, because people, if they're online and they're looking at a website, they don't necessarily want to pick up the phone. So but they're quite happy to just ask a quick question. Conversion rates, there's a lift in that. There's a lift in engagement and also an increase in the average order value when people start engaging through web chat. So lots of financial reasons for doing it. It's not a cost, it's also a generator. So again, some research that shows us how popular live chat is compared to other online contact methods. So by far and away the most popular, as you can see there. Interesting, I think one of the main reasons for that is I think the average response time for an email these days is about 12 hours in some areas. So customers just aren't willing to wait for that. Okay, and also in terms of satisfaction rating online, live chat, again, I think that's because of its synchronicity. It has, a far higher rating than any of the others.
And why do you think that's so high, Silva? Why do you think the live chat is much higher than the rest?
I think it's because, again, with the millennials and the Gen Z people, it's very much they can transact on their own terms, and it offers that ability to do other things at the same time. So I just think it's a symptom of the way things are changing with technology, really.
Okay.
We access our information. Thank you. Okay, so let's move on then. So we've mentioned B2B versus B2C, and I think actually, the two are moving close together now. So what business customers expect from another supplier is becoming much closer to the model that people expect if they're a retail customer. And as a result of that, their expectations in terms of what they get have gone higher. I think it's really fair to say, when I look at web chats and part of the work when I start working with the companies, I'll look at their web chats, to see what's going on, to see what's happening. And oftentimes they're very transactional. So the customer comes on, they ask the question, it gets answered, off they go. And I think historically we've been very good and what companies have tried to do is treat web chat in the same way as telephone calls and have an average call handling time and manage it that way. But actually what the last year has really told us is that actually customers don't mind spending longer on a chat if they get the service they want. And actually the customer satisfaction stats go up the longer the chat. So we're starting to look at especially the big companies are starting to look at chat lengths in a slightly different way now, and longer chats, and the average is about 11-12 minutes across all industries, tend to get, and that's definitely gone up over the last year, tend to get the better customer satisfaction ratings and tend to lead to more of an uplift in sales. So whereas before it's been, you know, a need for speed, now it's, well, hang on a minute, let's look at the customer experience. And I think that's been the big shift in the last year, and that's the big learn in terms of WebChat. Okay. And I think also, just picking up on that point, an end-to-end sales process. A lot of companies are really nervous about completing a process on WebChat. And I think increasingly we need to be able to look at that. Quite often companies will focus on, well, how do I get them to move to another channel? And sometimes customers just don't want to do that. They just want to do what they want to do and get the information there and then, and complete the sale if necessary. And lots of companies are now actually doing that. And, you know, there's no reason why we can't do that for fairly straightforward sales through WebChat. Which brings me on to the last point, really. We can't rely on getting them. You know, if I'm doing a little web chat while I'm at work on the side of my desk and I'm doing something else, I'm not going to be interested in picking up the phone. And I've seen quite a lot of resistance in that as well for some customers. So I'm not saying we can never do it. And if you do want customers to switch channels, you really need to think about how we go about persuading the customer that might be a good idea within the web chat itself. And quite often what you'll see is just a quite blunt change tack, and say, well, I'll give you a ring if that's all right. And the customer's going, whoa, 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 whoa. And it tends to break rapport. So, you know, the same principles apply as face-to-face and telephone with web chat. People forget about good old rapport in web chats, but it's just as necessary. In fact, maybe even more necessary, because we haven't got that face-to-face element. So let's move on then. Right, so what I've gathered together is some of the key principles, things that I've noticed as I've gone along, as I've been assessing them for the top 50, or as I've been working companies to help them improve their sales or service. So some of the key things that I've really noticed. So first thing I often notice is oftentimes the web chat agents have been selected from telephony agents, and sometimes it works, but sometimes it doesn't. So for instance, spelling and grammar becomes really important in web chat, and the ability to multitask, and you know, that's not everyone's forte. And you know, I have seen web chats where, you know, the spelling and grammar has been terrible. Now you might think, well, some customers wouldn't notice, but some customers will. And you know, the customers that, you know, do care about spelling will notice. The ones that don't care about spelling won't notice if it's spelt right. So I think on balance, we definitely need to think about that carefully. The other thing is the agents often have training in how to use whichever web chat, live chat system they've had. So they know how to do canned responses, they know the hotkeys, they know all the stuff. But what they haven't had training in is the soft skills that they need to manage chats. You know, what's different? Because I think people think, well, it's just like an email, isn't it? But a bit faster. Well, no, it's not, because you've got that synchronicity to manage. And particularly if they've got a couple of web chats on the go, then how do they manage that? How do they manage the gaps if they've got more than one customer on a chat? All those sorts of things. And how do they, you know, keep the customer engaged? There's all those things that they don't really cover. And what tends to happen is each advisor or agent will evolve their own way of dealing with things, or just kind of replicate what they do on email fundamentally, which leads to some interesting situations sometimes. Okay, keep an eye on speed. This certainly web chat has evolved. So generally companies are getting much faster now at responding to web chats. So generally speaking, the average pickup speed is about 45 seconds. It used to be much longer than that. Companies used to be much slower at picking them up. So we generally get in much better. I think that's because we tend to have dedicated areas now. So there's the speed to pick up a chat when it comes through, wherever it comes through, if it comes directly from the website or from a bot, wherever it comes through. And also keeping an eye on gaps in chats, because that's when potentially someone's going to wander off. And that's the beauty, but also the downfall of someone being online. They could be browsing another website at the same time. So we need to keep an eye on speed that way. And also in the wider context of speed, the length of your chats, because the trend over the last year is for them to get longer. And what people have found is, which has been not necessarily counterintuitive, but I think in the past, web chat's been seen as a way to manage things quickly, but actually now people have started to see it as a way to make sales and improve customer satisfaction ratings. So definitely keep an eye on speed in many ways. Monitor for quality. This is an interesting one. I often find that people will read the chats and give feedback, but there's not really a standard as to what good looks like. So you might have a number of team leaders, and they've all got their bits that they pay attention to. But say, for instance, if I ever see question marks or someone say, "Are you still there?" I know the gaps are too long, without even having to look at the timings. But looking at the timings, looking at what's said, looking at the inputs of what's said on a web chat is really important. And they're dead easy to monitor, because you can just, pull them out, or you can manage by walking around and just go and see, what people have got on the screens. It's really easy. And the other thing that we can do, the other key principle really, is to use the information that you get on web chats. So look at the questions that are being asked and ask yourself, well, is that information on the website? Should that information be on the website? All those sorts of things. And also think about, if you use a bot or if you use any pre-chat information that you gather from the customer, just think about how that's used in the chat. Because quite often it's not unusual that you'll see the advisor ask the same question that's already been asked in the bot. They'll cover the same ground, or they just won't read. So the customer might have typed something in the pre-thing, so I need to know about this, and the agent comes back and says, "Oh, how can I help you today?" Now, if you put that into the context of a shop, if you went up to the checkout at Tesco's and we'll put your trolley up there, and someone says, "How can I help you?" you'd think they're a bit bonkers. But we tolerate it in chat for some reason. It always makes me smile when I see that one. So that's a bit of a very common thing that people do. Also align it to your brand. So think about, when you're setting the standard for your chats, how do you feel about emojis? How do you feel about lol? Is that okay? What sort of message do you want to send? So that's something to bear in mind as well. And so otherwise, if you don't decide, one of your agents will, or all of your agents will. And also the other key thing is personalize it. I think when customers go onto a bot, they're not entirely sure, when they go onto web chat, they might get directly to advisor, they might go through to a bot. Most people are familiar with that concept. So the worst thing that any advisor wants to happen, or an agent, is that the customer thinks they're a bot. So a real key thing in web chat is to humanize them, so that the customer really understands they're talking to a living, breathing human being. Because if they think they're talking to a robot, it's not a very productive. They're not going to bother, with the niceties. So it's really important, and just in terms of thinking about what you do on the phone or face to face, that rapport element of it, we really need to make the customer understand that this is a living, breathing human being that they're speaking to. Because if there's one thing that changes the tone of a chat, that is it. And often I see opportunities missed. So right at the beginning of the chat, customers don't give their name. Well, that's a great opportunity to show that you're a living, breathing human being, because computers generally don't have names. and you know, the syntax that they use, you know, so that it's really clear that they're not a computer. But we often miss that, and they use quite formalized language, and it could just as well be a computer. And again, that's a real shame, because it's a real opportunity missed in terms of building rapport with the customer. So let's move on to selection and training now then. So as I've said, spelling and grammar are key, as is the need to multitask. So when you're thinking about recruiting, really think about those things, because trust me, it's really hard to train in, and it's not that much fun training in spelling and grammar. The difference between there, and there, or you're welcome, and where the apostrophe should or shouldn't be, is something that I've found myself doing. But I think you can save yourselves a lot of trouble by not recruiting people that don't have those skills. So investing in training, I've certainly used websites where I've had a really bad experience, and I just think, you know what, I won't bother with their web chat again. And, you know, I'll probably go to a different site, or I'll phone up, I guess, possibly. But it definitely puts people off, and they definitely remember. The other thing is what gets measured gets done. From my team, from my management days, I've always believed this. So, you know, embed the training. So when you do your training, make sure that you keep agents focused on inputs. Inputs are the key to this. I think particularly if you work in a sales environment, people measure outputs. That's really easy. What's the conversion rate? How many of these sold? You know, how many calls have we? How many web chats have we handed off to the sales team? All those sorts of things. But actually, they're just the result of what the agent has done in the web chat. So what we really need to do to make a difference is to be looking at the inputs, what they've done and what they've said during the chat. And I can't emphasize enough, that's really important. And in order to do that, I'll talk about, you know, how you do that in a minute. But oftentimes, you know, that doesn't get done. We get focused on outputs rather than inputs.
Silva, can I just ask a question? Yeah. Why do you think a lot of companies don't bother training their web chat people? I know they train them on how to use the system. You've said that already. Yeah. But why do you think they don't bother with all the other training that is needed to help them be better on web chat?
I think a lot of companies just think it's a bit like an email or a bit like text, and hey, everyone knows how to text. So, you know, what can go wrong? But things do go wrong. So I think this not really understanding the nuances, and because it's such an emerging field, you know, I think it just get thrown in with emails, and well, they're already good telephone agents, so they know what to do. They've got the product knowledge, so this shouldn't be a problem. Okay. I think we're really missing a trick. Yeah, it's a good question, and you know, it's often when customers are having problems with the web chat, or it's not delivering what they thought it would deliver, that then they realise that actually, and when you look at the web chats, you can think, oh yeah, I can see why that's not working particularly well. Yeah, and I can see that this is going on here, and I can see, you know, then you can start to see the problems. But that could all be avoided if we'd been, you know, there'd been a clear expectation beforehand of what was expected. As with most things in life, I think clear expectations are always good.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Right. So speed, we've mentioned speed a little bit. So here we're looking at wait time. So this is research from the last year, so it's quite up to date. So you can see for the bigger contact centres, the wait times tend to be, or have been, slightly longer, but they've really come down in the last year. So the darker colour is 2020, and the lighter colour is 2019. So, and I think mainly that's because there's been a massive recruitment drive in terms of web chat. So there's a lot more because of COVID. So I think that's why the wait time's gone down on that one. Whereas, you know, the smaller ones have been more consistent. Incidentally, I think anything around 45 seconds is acceptable. If it's much longer than that, you start to lose the customer. So they're all well implemented, but it's interesting how the smaller ones tend to seem to be more flexible on that one. Okay, so here's a key principle on web chats: is they do tend to last longer, as I'm sure any of you that have been using it will appreciate that. So in order to make it comparable with the telephone, logic dictates it needs to be more than one. And in the past, I think it's fair to say that 5 has been the magic number. And I've seen a lot of contact centres tying themselves up in knots trying to achieve this. I think
Sorry, I've got to jump in here, Sil, because 5 chats at once seems like a lot of chats to me. How do you manage 5 conversations at once?
Well, that's a really interesting question. And I think it's really tricky. And I think what tends to give is the customer experience in those scenarios. So I think what the last year has taught us, and certainly the trend in web chat, is for the customer experience to take precedence over this and really see web chat as a sales and service tool rather than a cost. So I think certainly this year that number has been going down, and certainly when you look at the stats it doesn't seem to be that high anymore.
Okay.
So and it depends on the company. So for instance, I did some work with Childline. That's definitely one chat at a time. You couldn't do it any other way. Because of the complexity and the sensitivity of what you're talking around. If it's very, very transactional, very fast, then maybe you could get up to 5. But again, there's that word transactional. And if for instance you are in the business of selling supplies, and you've got 5 chats on the go, are you going to cross sell? Are you going to ask them the bigger questions, the wider questions to open up the conversation? Probably.
Exactly. I think 5 is still too many, even on a transactional thing. Yeah. I mean, I appreciate what you said, some of them have to be one-to-one.
Yeah.
But anything more than 2 or 3,
I agree personally.
I think you must lose the human touch on it and miss things.
Yeah, you do absolutely. So I think personally I think 2 or 3 is plenty if you're going to have an eye on the customer experience, which I think you have to. Yeah. And I don't think also we necessarily need to compare it with the phone anymore, because I think that's what we've done in the past, where we said, well, it takes longer, so therefore we need to have more on the go. But if you let go of that connection between the telephone and the web chat and say, well, actually, we need to offer web chat as an alternative because that's what people want, it kind of becomes irrelevant.
I actually think in the next few years, there'll be some companies who you won't even be able to pick up the phone to. Your only option will be to web chat.
Absolutely. I think it's happening now already, to be honest. Especially, I think COVID has forced a lot of people down that particular line. Okay. Well, let's move on then. So monitoring. It's easy to monitor. So you've got your walking about. You can provide your regular feedback because you can just, you're not even interrupting them. You can even give them feedback while they're on a chat, but you can certainly look at the chats afterwards and give them feedback. There can be a rich source of information, as we said earlier. So look at the questions that are being asked, what services can be handled using web chat. So, looking at what's being asked for. And also always don't be afraid to jiggle with your pre-chat stuff. If it's not working, change it. And the only way you'll find out if it's not working is by looking at your chats. Common mistakes. Again, the gold favourite, assuming that your telephony agents will make good web chat agents. Not necessarily so. Not having a clearly articulated customer experience model, I think, is the number one thing that gets people in a pickle. Because if you've not got an idea what good looks like, it makes it hard for your agents to deliver it. And a lack of regular feedback against a clear standard, which again links back to the customer experience. And in terms of what web chat agents do that can make things go wrong, they don't read the pre-chat stuff. So they go into, how can I help you today when the customer's already told them. not personalizing it. So just sending links out or using a canned response but not personalizing it. Lack of rapport, so just being very transactional. Using canned response, as I said, without personalizing it. And finally, not really managing chat. So particularly when they've got more than one, just leaving long gaps, and not using the tips and tricks to actually manage those gaps that are in, which will inevitably be there, but they're not managing them effectively. So the customers tend to drop off. So best practice, recruit carefully, decide on the customer experience you want to deliver, or someone else will, and that will probably be your agents. Train and support them. Personalize the interactions, so make sure that they are accounting for the human touch, and particularly focusing on the customer experience, and especially the element of rapport, because that's often what gets missed. And manage them. So don't just assume that they're just the same as emails, and look at them, see what's going on, know what's going on, just like you would with telephony. And finally, what we've got here are 3 little tips that make a big difference in web chat. So, this is an example of something that we might cover in a training course, really emphasising to the agents about how important those first few seconds are when they pick up a chat. So making themselves sound human, and also making them sound competent. So by reading their question and making sure it's spelt and the grammar's right. So these are really easy things to achieve, but surprisingly, done not consistently at all.
I have to say, on all the web chats I've been on, I've never seen anything like that example at the bottom.
No,
I just haven't.
No, they just say, well, how can I help you? And I think, well, I'll just cut and paste the thing that I typed in 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, no, I've never seen anything like that example at the bottom. It's an easy thing to have, but I've never seen it.
And straight away, in terms of rapport, you're on a winner.
Yeah.
Just do, oh, hi, how can I help you today? I'm thinking, well, you haven't read what I've already put in. I don't know who you are. And it makes it difficult. So they're really, really simple things. It's surprising how many people don't do it, like you say. And I've never seen anyone, you very rarely see people do it well. Okay, minding the gap is another one. So we talked about speed. So some simple tricks here. If they've got a long response, don't sit there typing for 2 minutes. Break it down into smaller ones. It's easy to do. Use canned responses, but personalize them, even if it's just by putting in the customer's name. It just makes it sound like you're a human, not a robot. This is a really one that, again, people often miss a trick with. Asking open questions. You what, you when's, you how's, you why's. You're getting good quality information, the same as you would over the phone, but what you're also getting is time, because by asking an open question, you're not inviting the customer to say yes or no, you're getting them to type. And while they're typing, they're not waiting for you. So therefore, there's not a gap. So therefore, they're not going to wander off. So again, this is a trick that's often missed. Signpost at what will be happening during any gaps. So, if you do need to go and check, the psychology of it is to tell them what you're going to be doing, because then in their little heads they can be thinking, oh, okay, she's going off to look at my account now to find out the information that she needs, and it keeps people's imagination ticking over. And if push comes to shove, then a callback if you can't actually manage it on a chat. So is there a way of actually doing that? So that's the second tip. And the last tip is this is a really common one. I'd say 90% of chats don't do this. So remember, a customer could have been through a bot, they could have filled a form in, they might have had to trawl through the website. I've given up trying to find what I need, I'm going to ask you, and they get through to you. If you can help them, please just tell them. It just makes so much difference. It's a simple thing, but people just forget to do it. It just means the customer can settle down and think, oh, thank God, someone can help me with this. I can relax now. I've not got to kind of explain myself all over again. So, you know, if your agents do those 3 simple things, like, you know, welcome them in, use their name, be aware of timings and manage the calls, and just reassure customers they can help, those 3 tiny things in and of themselves will improve the quality of web chats. And we've got, you know, loads more where they came from. So that's my 3 top tips. Time for questions now, really.
Well, we had a few questions on the chat.
Okay, all right.
There's a couple. What is the biggest trends in 2021 for web chat?
I think it is this move towards customer experience and away from managing time.
Okay.
I think that's definitely it in terms of what I'm seeing in the business.
One of the other ones was, can you recommend a simple web chat system if someone's not using web chat at the moment and they wanted to implement a simple system? Is there a system that you would particularly recommend?
Oh, there's so many. I mean, I would say go for something that's cloud-based, because then, you know, it's very easy to integrate into what you do now. But yeah, there's so many. And
somebody else asked about bots. What's your viewpoint on bots and how to best use the bots?
That's an interesting question. I think bots are a double-edged sword because some people won't, if they see a bot, they won't engage. So, you know, that can be a downside, but the upside of a bot is, you know, they can get you some good pre-chat data, which helps you then route the chat.
Right.
So, I think it depends on what you want to do. If you take away the bot, then what you end up doing is filtering sometimes chats through live agents. So I think overall, it depends on what you're doing with your web chat, really.
Well, somebody else has just asked, can you alternate, can you use bots with an agent? So can an agent, I guess what they mean is, use a bot? I guess what they're meaning there is a canned response.
You can get bots. I'm not quite sure I understood the question there.
I think what they're trying to say is, can you have a bot and an agent working on a chat at the same time?
On the same chat?
Yes.
Not normally, no, because normally the bot would filter it and then hand it off.
Okay.
So
right.
Usually the bot takes it first, and you have some questions that, you know, the bot will try and answer it,
and then pass it to a live person.
Pass it if it can't answer. Yeah.
Now they also asked, is there any good recommendations for bots? But I guess the bots will come with it was the same person who asked about, is there any good recommendations for which live chat system to use? I guess the bots just come standard within whichever system you choose.
They do, yeah.
Okay.
Their own little bots, but they are very, very what's the word I'm looking for? Changeable. So you can manage the bot and change the bot to make it do what you want it to do.
Okay.
That will be my top tip, really. Really get friendly with the bot if you're going to have one, and don't be afraid to fool around with it if it's not working. You know, if you're not getting many chats through, then maybe the bot's getting in the way. So
sure.
Often in sales, they turn the bot off because they want it to go straight to a live person, for instance.
Yes, yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, but with service, if it's a common question, you know, they might want it to go through a bot. But yeah. I think you always get a certain amount of fallout with it. You know, you do lose some customers with a bot because, in my personal experience, the number of times that a bot has actually answered the question I had is quite limited.
Okay, perfect. Well, I think you've given them some really good food for thought there, Silva. You know, some good tips that they can take away, and also something to think about. If we could just move on to the last slide before I stop the recording. So thank you for joining us. Those of you who registered and joined will get a copy of this anyway. If you've got any questions, you can email them through to me. My email is there. Also, there's lots of free information on the website. There's some free things on there about web chat too. And if you've got your camera on at the moment, you can click onto that QR code and find us on LinkedIn. So I'd like to say thank you very much for your time. And if you've got any further questions about web chat training, or anything else, then please do not hesitate to contact us. Thank you so much.